Go. We're on record.
All right. Well, this is yet another interesting episode of Security IQ. And today we have, along with Min Kirianis and myself, Elisa Mula, we have Ginger Hill. Say hi, Ginger.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, girls. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. You know, our first initial exploration into starting this podcast with you. We had a really good conversation, and now I can't remember any of the really cool stuff that we were talking about.
Well, we can start with Ginger introducing herself. That would help.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's start that way.
All right, go ahead, Ginger.
Well, it's crazy being a journalist because now I'm in the hot seat. So I guess to start out, I'm the daughter of an amazingly supportive mom. I'm a friend to pretty much every person that I meet. I don't know a stranger. I love to get to know people deeply and not just on the surface. I like to know what makes people tick and really get to understand them. Like I said, I'm a journalist. My focus is the security industry, but I'm really dedicated to, telling each and every story as factually and honestly as possible. But I also like to add heart and keep my reader engaged so that my reader really, understands the story and then is able to engage with the content as well. I'm a dog mom. I don't have any children, but I am a dog mom to Molly Brown. She's my Border Collie Aussie mix. She keeps me laughing and on my toes every single day for the past 11 years.
She needs to make a cameo, just so you know.
And I have an English massive.
And I have a
Hey, all right. I love it. Yes.
You know what? As a follow-up, send us a picture of her. Maybe we can
we'll add
edit it in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to start a blog about dogs and security, but anyway, that's another conversation. So
There's a lot of dogs in security.
Shameless plug, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, by the way, I wish this was bourbon. It is not bourbon. It's green tea. So.
A little early, but I appreciate it.
Too early for good drinks.
Me and Elisa, we have our coffee. We're good. We're good to go. Got that caffeine going. Let's see. I'm a country girl at heart. I was raised in the country. My dad built our house.
Wow.
I grew up on a dirt road. I rode my bike. I rode horses. I went to the same school, K through 12, same campus. So I'm pretty plain, I guess you would say, plain Jane. I grew up eating fried bologna sandwiches with mayonnaise on white bread.
I heard it's good, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? It's very good.
I heard. Never tried it. I heard it's good.
It's delicious.
Wait, did you say fried bologna?
Yeah. Fried bologna, all beef bologna, and you fry it in a skillet. And it's really good with bacon grease if you like bacon. But yeah, I know.
And I heard liverwurst is similar, and it's really good when you pan fry it too.
I even dabbled in potted meat and Spam, but
Spam is delicious, just so you know.
I know, you can fry that too. Have you ever had a fried burger?
Well, with Hawaii, musubi. Where was it? They Spam on rice wrapped with seaweed. Well, anyway, we just digress. Sorry, Ginger, keep going. We're talking about food.
Sorry, I'm a total foodie too, so you can tell. I grew up writing all kinds of stories. I spent hours in my room just making up stories, just my paper and pen in my hand, and I would just pen made up worlds. I had a really good family growing up. I'm a mixture of my mom, my nanny, who is my mother's grandmother, and my dad, who's a total Southerner. My mom's really sweet. My nanny was very sassy, and my dad was just hick. So put it lightly, I'm just a mix of all that. Educationally, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in English, not journalism, but I do have an English background. I taught for a little bit. Believe it or not, just FYI, I can be a little shy and introverted, not usually. And I love nature. So I don't know if that's what y'all wanted, but that's
a great intro. But the other piece of it is, right, and I'm going to apologize for the obvious noise in the background, as I already mentioned. But that's what this is about, right? We're not looking to do the typical, here's my security product. We want to show you X, Y, Z. We want to get to know everyone in the industry and everyone from all aspects, not just, people selling product. We want to really hear about them, about their interests in security, and talk more about things a little bit outside of the box in our world. So that was good. That was a great intro.
Thank you.
We also want to see how you tick, because now understanding how you tick, That's going to make this conversation a little more interesting too.
Uh-oh, hey. You're
In
gonna
case, in case you couldn't figure it out, Min is the button pusher between the two of us.
Oh,
So.
come on, it's not that
Fine.
bad.
We got this. We got this. We got our coffee. Two girls with two coffees.
I'm ready.
No, imagine putting a little Irish cream in that. That's another story. Nothing more entertaining if we do it that way. Just say.
Just kidding.
There's a joke there, and then I'm going to leave alone. But anyway.
Tell. Hold on. No. You are going to tell that joke, my dear. No. See, now that you brought it up, you do have to say, because I will make sure.
I was going to say, you're telling me about Irish cream.
Yes, I am telling you about Irish cream. So you're going to talk about Irish cream now. Do you like the Irish cream? Now I'll let the audience figure that one out.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a lot of emails after this episode.
Oh, I know. It's so inappropriate. Anyway, let's just go to some of the subjects that we were talking about, because a lot of it was really, really interesting content. And I think that it relates a lot to what Min and I are focused on with WISE, Women in International Security. And it's just, again, conversation sort of out of the box, security related, clearly, but definitely not something you see at every conference or you're going to hear from any of the manufacturers out there. So who wants to kick that off?
I'm happy to see it. I mean, like, one of the things that people are always talking about is the media, how the media is impacting how society is reacting. And you as a journalist, you're right in the center of that. I mean, and you can see I'm getting a little jaded. People are getting jaded from seeing the media, what's on the news and reading the papers, et cetera. Like, what do you think about all this? Like, how do you feel, the media should have done to kind of help people along versus, the way I see it is, let's get the next best news out really quickly to the public, and then everybody freaks out. So, that's a big contentious subject, I know, and I've spoken to Elisa, I've spoken to a lot of people about that, but you coming from that area, I mean, this is where it hits home.
Right. I think, it all comes back to ethics, and it comes back to actually, honoring the person you're talking to and sharing their story from their perspective. And I think it's not about just getting a story out there to get a story out there. It's about really diving deep into that person, listen to what they're telling you, really serve that person. I feel like I'm in a position of servantship, not just to write a story every day because it's due at 5 p.m. but it's, truth and accuracy and fairness and humility, all those things play into that. And I think that some of the stories are missing that aspect, to be honest.
That's true. But so what do you think about all the other stuff that's going on? Right now with, I'm not going to say Black Lives Matter, but that whole movement, COVID is now in the backseat, right in the back burner right now. You don't really hear much about it. You hear some parts of it, but that's been taking priority. It seems like let's talk about the next big thing and then drop the other thing that has been on everybody's mind. What do you, how should the audience take that? I mean, the reality is people are just like WTF, what the fuck is going on here?
We're talking about the riots and things like that going on. That's just a hard topic. It's what's happening. You can see it on video. I mean, you see what's happening. It's honest. It's truth. When you use words to describe things, I think sometimes it can get a little skewed. You have to be careful in the words that you use to describe what's going on. I never thought I would live in a world where I saw so many riots, to be honest. I mean, I feel like we're going backwards in history a little bit to the 60s. I feel like we should be a lot farther along than we are now as far as, prejudice and discrimination and all those topics, that you don't really want to talk about. But, we should just be a lot farther along than we are. And it's crazy that I feel like we're going backwards. And I feel like the media has a chance to really propel it forward and put more, not necessarily in a positive light, because there's a lot of positive things going on, but there's a lot of negative things going on too. And people need to be able to see both sides so they can analyze that and make their own decisions.
That's a good point. And so that leads me to another question that I just thought of this morning before we jumped on. When you talk about the good and the bad, what's out there, why is the media not plastering what's going on with MS-13 right now? I'm sure you heard about all the arrests, or did you?
MS-13?
MS-13. So there's a huge initiative in terms of human trafficking, drug trafficking, all the stuff that the Attorney General is sort of going after in those areas. But it's not really portrayed on mainstream media. You know, you almost have to dig for a lot of these stories. So just within like the last 24 hours, they had these big press releases around a huge arrest and sort of takedown of MS-13 gang members nationwide. And that is tremendous. When you're talking about human trafficking, drug trade, all of that stuff, that is a huge accomplishment. So when you want to tell a story about a really rough subject and where we're making huge strides, why is the media not reporting on that? I mean, again, some are. I'm not going to say it's not anywhere, but in retrospect, we can sit and plaster all the horrific numbers from COVID and how bad it is over and over and over, or we can balance it with, look, this is where we are in the world. Here's some not so convenient news around COVID, but it's not anything really new. You know, these are numbers that we've been sort of estimating and being wrong about quite a bit. All the rioting stuff, what's changed there. And oh, by the way, here's a tiny little bit of progress. We just took down one of the biggest gangs from a security perspective that has been terrorizing this nation for quite some time. And you don't see, it's not balanced.
It's not balanced.
So,
no. And I think, you know, sometimes journalists can be scared. I mean, honestly, journalists have lost their lives reporting. You know, when you talk about gangs, you talk about crime. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, retribution when it comes to that stuff. You don't know who, you know, who you're dealing with a lot of the times, and it can be scary sometimes.
So you as a journalist then, do you feel that there has to be a balance somewhere where, you know, because I think when you introduced yourself, you talked about getting factual data, right? And I think this also leads us to social media, the media and the social media, like how they all interplay with each other, that nowadays people are so quick to just call out each other on social media without doing their due diligence or fact checking. So how do you see this evolving now? Like as a journalist, and you're right in the middle of it again, how do you see this evolving in the future? And how do you do a fact check? How do you think this should happen in an ideal situation?
Right. So I just want to take one step back. I just want to talk about words in general and how powerful that they are. They're written, they're spoken. However you get a word, you see a word, you know, you interpret a word. Let's just start there. It's powerful. I mean, and I'm going to answer your question, but I'm kind of going to go around in a circle. But I'm getting there. So I think about the plant experiments that people do. So for example, IKEA donated some plants to a school in Dubai, and the children got to watch these plants grow and not grow. So the plants got sunlight and water, the exact same amount each and every day. One plant got to hear on loop for 30 days. It was a recording, and it was all negative, like you're ugly, I hate your blossoms, you know, you suck, whatever. The other plant got to hear, oh my gosh, you're beautiful, I love you, I love your blooms, you know, that kind of thing. And after that 30 days, the one that was positive, all the positive affirmations, you know, it was lively and green, and it was just so happy looking as a plant. The other one was literally brown. It was literally dying. And so people have to realize, first of all, words matter. And I think journalists or not, truth or not, they do matter, and they can, you know, hurt and things like that, which leads me to social media. You know, you do need to do your due diligence. Just because somebody says something does not make it true. You've got to self-check. Just like the whole self-care movement, you got to take care of yourself before you take care of each other, or your family or your friends. Self-check what you read before you believe that. You honor your spidey senses. Like, you have intuition for a reason. If it doesn't sound right or feel,
I love spidey senses. I use that all the time.
But it's true. It's that little voice. And if it doesn't sound right or feel right, it probably isn't. You know, we tell our kids that all the time. Use your intuition. As far as quotes, you know, who said them and what did they say? Especially if it's somebody that you know their writing and everything. Does it sound like something that they would say at all? You know, if it doesn't, then maybe the quote got a little skewed. Who knows? And then, you know, ask yourself, why is that article being written? Is it trying to persuade you to think a certain way? Is it just telling you a story with facts and figures and things like that? You know, really think about that. So yeah, I think that's some of the ways that you can self-check.
I think Min makes a really good point in terms of social media and people sort of, I hate using the term like cancel culture, but it's that same vibe in terms of, you know, I'm just going to call you out and blast you, and it's social media so I can get away with it, you know, and, you know, particularly in the professional world, you know, you don't expect to see that often. I've actually been told by people on LinkedIn, like, oh, you know, you shouldn't like or share that article because it's a little too political, which I appreciate the idea of trying to keep LinkedIn professional. Totally get it. But especially in our line of work,
Yep.
you know, politics play a big role in what we do. Security, the riots, COVID, a lot of that ties into what we do. So it's really hard to delineate. Look, if you're going to go on and just blast about your Starbucks coffee, okay, maybe that's not really relevant, but there's a happy medium. And in the same vein, there's a happy medium with calling people out on bullshit. Excuse my French.
That's all right. Look, I'm about to curse to myself.
On social media and just outright blasting someone for absolutely no reason, being wrong about it. Number one.
You know what I'm going to be alluding to then.
And that's exactly where I'm going. Like, look, you know what? If maybe you disagree with someone, maybe you don't believe what they're saying for whatever reason, but how do you look as a professional? I'm going to say security professional. How do you look as a professional? To sit there and say, you know what? I'm going to call you out just because I don't like what you're posting. And that's when it comes down to it, that's really what it's about is I don't approve of your post. I don't believe what you're saying, or I don't agree with your perception of things. So I'm just going to attack you. How is that in any way, shape, or form professional? And if you're a security professional, you have the ability to do background checks or fact check like you're talking about. Clearly you didn't do your due diligence if you're calling somebody out wrongly. So there you go.
I mean, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, what do you think about that?
I was like, even if you call somebody out in general, if they are wrong or not wrong, you know, okay, let's back up. Journalists have opinions. We're human. We bleed, you know, we drink gallons of coffee every single day. We're human. We eat. We do have opinions, but there's a time and a place for those. And when you put your opinion out there, it should be noted, hey, this is my opinion only. Now, when you go out and blatantly blast people, that's just, that to me, in my opinion, that is wrong. It is not ethical, nor does it solve anything. Like, why would you even do that? Like, there's no point in doing that. It's just to make yourself look better. But then in the interim, like you said, you look terrible because people see right through that.
Right. But the other thing that you pointed out that's very interesting is, like, as you're sharing articles regarding if it's political or non-political, I think one of the things there is thought leadership. What you're doing is you're expanding people's thought processes to think about, and as Lisa said, we're trying to think outside the box. What we're trying to do is not create an idea of this is the way you need to think, because I think this is what's happening in the world. You need to think this way or we won't accept you. What we're trying to promote here is, look, folks, we're all adults and we're all humans at the end of the day. We're all educated people. We all went to college. You got to think for yourself. You can't just read the media and believe in it, right? And to Elisa's point about that, I had written recently, I think maybe a few weeks, maybe a month ago, about calling people out because you didn't do your fact checking, specifically for a reason, because someone did call someone out. And I actually didn't challenge, but I said, please do explain, because I am not sure what you're talking about. And I think they did finally fact check and realize they made the mistake. The problem with social media especially is they don't go away. The minute you say anything, regardless if it's a private message or a public message, they're all recorded, ladies and gentlemen. They are recorded, and if need to get them, you are able to get them.
Yeah.
All right. But that being said, I mean, do you feel people are very one-track minded at this point, or do you feel like people really are accepting other people's thoughts and, you know, their opinions at this point?
I mean, from my perspective, I think in general, overall, I think a lot of people are one-track minded. I think they don't think outside of the box and they don't use their critical thinking skills. I was a teacher for a few years, and those skills are not really taught in school. Like, you're not taught how to think critically and to analyze information and things like that. You're spoon-fed. You've got to write this, you've got to write a story about X, Y, and Z. And if it's not this, then, it's very structured, so a lot of people don't even know how to critically think.
I think we should probably add into that thing is like critical thinking, and then what do you feel people need to do in order to achieve that critical thinking mindset? Like, what's your opinion on that?
So critical thinking. So, think for yourself. Don't just be spoon-fed knowledge. You have opinions. You are raised, everybody's raised a certain way. Everybody's raised in different environments. You're influenced by, society, but you're influenced by your family. You're raised to think. And it's okay to have opinions. Right. But it's not okay to put other people down for their opinions. It's okay to listen. It's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to just bully and just be mean to be mean, basically. It's like Mean Girls, right?
Or trolls, I like to call them.
So let's say you find yourself, because we're all human, we all make mistakes, right? So let's say you find yourself in a situation where, okay, I wrongfully accuse somebody or I attack somebody, and maybe I've had a day or two to cool off, and I realize, maybe it was a little harsh. Mm-hmm. In my mind, and maybe, I'm oversimplifying, it might be an opportunity to say, you know what, let me do the right thing. Let me make this right. Let me at least write, apology letter. You know what, you're right. I made a mistake. My apologies. Simple, sweet, to the point. You don't have to dig in. You don't have to make some big public display. But I do think it's important when somebody does make that mistake to come clean. And if you announce your mistake publicly, I think you have to, or if you make your mistake publicly, I think you have to announce your mistake publicly.
Agreed.
And it's not, and I'm not saying like everyone needs to apologize, because we had this conversation about women, right? So women in security, for years, got exposed to, and I hate to use the whole Me Too piece of it, but got exposed to a lot of things that men did not have to deal with. And it still continues to happen to this day, right? And it's always a topic of conversation. But when we interviewed, in fact, Lee, not too long ago, we said to him, we're not looking for an apology. Like, that portion of the program is done. Right. We want to move forward. And that's sort of like the idea. If I personally make a mistake, and if I don't, and do it publicly, and if I don't publicly apologize, once I figured out, yes, that was my mistake, well, then shame on me. But there is a point where you say, you know what, let's fucking move on. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Let's move on. Let's edit that out, please.
So we want
it's real.
But there's a point where you say, like, let's move on, let's move forward, let's not keep rehashing. And again, to tie it back to mainstream media, I see a lot of the same rehashing, regurgitating of just old nonsense. You want to find a solution to move forward? Great. I'm all for, digging up, this is all the things we've done wrong over the years, and here's how we're going to fix it. But not just the continuous spewing of, oh, this happened to me, or this happened to this one or that one. So that's just my thoughts. But what do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, there's a time to get it all out there, and then there's a time to move on, and then there's a time, to fix it and to whatever happened. Like you said, it's just like in social media, you can't take it back. When it's out there, it's out there. Right. As far as apologizing, yes, I definitely, it's like the golden rule. And again, I was raised in the South. I grew up saying I'm sorry probably way too much, but that's what we do. I mean, you kill a fly and you feel guilty. Like it's just, you squish a bug, you feel guilty, whatever.
I thought I was the only one.
No, my God. It's so sad, especially spiders.
Other people do it.
Min does not feel bad. She lives for squishing bugs. So
I'm a catch and releaser. I'm totally a catch and releaser. Because my dad would make me feel guilty. He was like, Ginger, now spiders eat mosquitoes and flies. We don't kill them. And I'm like, okay, Dad,
Father,
that's what I say to my kids. I say the same thing.
See, it goes down, right? but yeah, it's like the golden rule. It's like respect your neighbor. It's like
Mhm.
you honor each other. You don't put each other down.
Well, so for folks who don't know what the golden rule is, do unto others what others do unto you. So that's a key. God, I
Yeah.
can't believe I still remember that. That's back. We were taught back then. That's
Right?
back in elementary school.
But people forget that. Like, where is this rule at? Like, the fact that you even had to say it.
It's
I mean, you know.
look. I for me, I just my kids are in elementary school, so I see it, and I respect the school here. They teach them about respect,
Yeah.
social intelligence, social emotional intelligence, all the other stuff. But I always find that some teachers are very, and not saying what you're saying. You're right. They don't teach them critical thinking. They're trying to, but I've noticed some of the curriculum. This is the way it needs to go historically, and this is bad. And this look, I understand you got to teach your kids bad versus right, but if you look at just like some of the political history, historical things
Yep.
that are out there. If you read books here, it says one thing. If you read books at another country, it says another thing. It's a very interesting perception, which leads us to the other thing is about tearing down these statues. Remember that whole, I think it's still, I don't know if it's still going. I stopped looking at the news, I'll be honest.
Mhm.
But this whole thing about taking down statues. What do you think about all that?
Hmm.
As a journalist,
As a journalist, no.
yeah, as a journalist, what do you feel about that?
Off the record, no, I'm just kidding. Honestly, removing a statue, it doesn't erase history. It doesn't erase what happened. You can tear down anything you want to tear down, but at the end of the day, people live through that. It's the oral tradition, the stories, the people that lived it. History is full of choices that we've made. It's mistakes. It's positive moments. It's negative moments. It's all how that comes together. Yes, there are some bad things that happened in the past, but it's how we take that bad and we turn it into good. There's good and bad in the world. And unless we know what's bad, unless we've been taught those things, we can't fix it. And so tearing down a statue, yes, it's a statement, and it shows you're destructive. I mean, it shows that you're rationally just, you're just wanting to destroy something basically, instead of a logical approach.
I'm going to add one piece to that, and I can't remember exactly who said it. I want to say it was a Picasso quote or something. It's okay to break things as long as you replace it with something better. And
I love that.
that's what we need. That's what we need to see. Like, you want to tear that down? Okay, so put something else better up that really resonates with the overall message. So, I'm not really for the tearing down of the statues. If there is, and maybe in some circumstances, right? But there does need to be some sort of like systematic evaluation of, are we taking this down?
Mhm.
Or are we just being destructive just for the sake of being destructive? If we are going to take it down, what are we going to replace it with?
Mhm.
And it should have a better message
Yep.
than what we're seeing on TV.
But
Agreed?
That's where it's logical. That's where it's logical to do it. But people are just doing it, to rip it out. And it's like, plant a tree. I mean, trees are nice. Like, let's plant a tree in honor of, the people that were persecuted, or, something.
Right.
Or better yet, replace the statue with something that represents that movement. Like what good
Yeah.
came out of it? What
That's
good
great.
came out of it? I mean, this is all countries are built on war. We all know that.
Mhm.
But I think we need to learn from that in order to make it better, like you said, right? Because otherwise you can't learn from your mistakes. And this is why we
Mhm.
said we don't need apologies for that reason. If we needed apologies, we'd be rehashing this over and over again like a vicious cycle.
Right.
But Lisa's right, some sort of systematic assessment as to, all right, look, this may be a bad connotation for this general to be here because he's a Confederate Army general who's fighting for a different cause, but replace it with something else. Like,
Mhm.
what came out from this? The freedom, freedom of the slaves. All right, reenact a statue that represents that and show
Mhm.
that. I think that would be more representative of the message that's going out there versus, as you said, destructive.
Mhm.
I will say though, during those riots, there are peaceful movements that were there as well. So
Yes.
you have
Very
Agreed.
people who are actually doing the right way of
Yeah.
representing themselves as they're peacefully moving through. But then you have the others with an agenda that you saw, the looting, the fires, the destruction that went on. It's like, what is the purpose of that?
And unfortunately, that's where the media steps in. They get all the negative, but where are those positive stories to balance that out, to see that.
You know where those positive stories are? The ones that I found anyway, on social media. You have people filming police officers that, and again, I'm certainly not taking sides
Yeah.
publicly anyway. But you have some police officers that are taking a knee. You have some police officers that are saying, I'm not going to kneel, but I'll walk with you.
Exactly.
And let's figure out a way to make this better. And the emotion that you see between protester and officer is incredible. And that's the stuff, again, you want to see on mainstream, but you're seeing it plastered all over. So at least I'm seeing it all over social media.
You're right.
And that's the power of video. You see that emotion. You know, how is a journalist am I going to capture that in words? You know, thank God we have video that you can see that on that person's face. That's just, you know, so thankful that somebody's like, you know, just at least acknowledging that they're there, acknowledging that, hey, we're going to do this together hand in hand.
Right.
And speaking to the media, or social media, one of the ones that I found really inspiring, it was an African-American rioter, and there was a white man, an older white man, and he was getting trampled, literally getting trampled. And the African-American reached down and picked him up, literally picked him up on his shoulders so he wouldn't be hurt.
Wow.
I mean, if that doesn't tell you something, my gosh.
I just got chills.
You know,
I know.
it's scary. And, you know, this whole negativity, you should see like some of the people who were protecting the police officers during the protests because others were getting
That's right. There was one image of, I want to say it was like 3 African-American gentlemen that were like locked arms,
and
barricading the rioters from the police.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and you don't see stuff like this. I mean, there's good and bad in everybody, and we all see that. But you're right. It's just like, why is this the positivity that's out there for people who are trying to make the world a better place, right, to live in, for people to grow, right? Because I am, yes, people, I am an Asian minority.
No way! You're kidding me.
Wait a minute. I'm just finding this out now.
Yeah, you can kill me later. But my kids are going to be growing up in this, and you know, I don't want them ostracized. And I'm sure a lot of people have the same feelings. Like, we're trying to do this for the kids, right? And then you see the kids that are actually in the movements, but then you have the media plastering, and then you have negativity. The kids should not be doing this. I said, look, people, I hate to say this, but they're growing up in this world. Either you make it better for them, or don't say anything. Move aside and let them grow and learn.
Exactly.
And I'm going to add one thing. You know, Min and I come from a community that is literally the melting pot within the melting pot. And this is, you know, scientific fact. I mean, you can go, I don't know if it's the census that publishes all these numbers on a regular basis, but we both come from Queens, and Queens has the most amount of ethnic backgrounds out of any county in New York.
Yeah.
You know, even more so than Manhattan. So, you know, it's, if you can blend in Queens, and if you don't have that diversity in Queens, so I think she speaks from authority, of course, being of Asian descent, but also living through that or growing up in that type of environment, you get to see everything. So, and that, you know, in my opinion, I think that's the perspective that everyone needs to take. Is it's not just a Black Lives thing. It's not just like, everyone really needs to take a good hard look at how just people treat each other in general.
Right.
You know, there's a good way, there's a not so good way. I hate to use the word bad, but, and then there's something in the middle, and, you know, we need to keep striving for.
Yeah. I envy you girls though for growing up in that environment. I mean, literally I grew up I went to school. There was one African-American family. There was one Hispanic family, and that's it. So K through 12, I was around all white kids. Like, so I didn't get that. And so when I graduated high school, I was just I love culture. Oh my gosh. I love food. I love language. I love learning about people. And I think that's where that all comes from, that stems from, is I didn't have that growing up. But man, when I finally got the chance to get out there and really, you know, understand people and culture, I was loving it. So I would have loved to have grown up in Queens, I think. I don't know if I would have survived, but.
But, you know, that's a very interesting point there. What do you recommend as an individual who's been growing up in a very, I would say, in a bubble where it's a very closed environment?
It was a bubble.
How do you recommend others to break out of that bubble, to be able to not just see the world, but have an open mindset as to accepting, not just accepting, but learning? I think the big word is learning about the other culture? Like, what would you recommend others to do?
My goodness. So I get, no, I guess the way I was raised, my parents were very open with me. If I had a question about anything, I could ask my mom or my dad, and they would tell me the truth. They would tell me, yes, there are Black people. Yes, there are, there are Asian people, there are people with different skin tones, growing up. And so it's funny, like when I was a baby, I had gone to the doctor, and I was like 3 years old, and there was an African-American family in there. My mom would say, I don't remember this, but we were playing in the floor, and I was just rubbing her face and just adoring her face. And she was doing the same to me. And I think it was because we did look different and we could see that, but we didn't understand, you know what I mean? And so I think it's just being open to the fact that we're not all the same. And thank God we're not. Oh my God. Can you imagine living just the same? Can you imagine living with yourself? Imagine living with yourself day in, day out. Like you're married to yourself. Like that's crazy.
I can't imagine not having Indian food in my life. So thank you, God.
But it's just, seeking that and knowing that there is a world outside of your bubble. Like there are people that, I don't know. It's just such a great world. And it's just, it's such exploratory. Be curious, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, ask why. If you really want to know something, find out. So I just think being.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna ask a follow-up question for that one for you then.
Bring it.
Share about that. So here's the other thing that's always been, and this is a conversation I've been having with Elisa, and we've been talking about creating a program for K-12, right? For security, being built in security in the school as a child growing up. Do you feel kids need to be exposed to the truth and the reality of the dangers of the world instead of stranger danger, you shouldn't talk to strangers, but let them see, what really is happening, what really bad people do, because now it sets a tone, not just for the children, but also for the parents to actually have this conversation with the kids. Do you think do you feel like teachers should do that? Do you feel journalists need to really publicize the truth about what the reality of bad people are? I'm going to say bad, but, people who are there to create malicious intent are.
Yeah, you've got to learn that somewhere. Speaking from two sides here. So as a teacher, do I think it's my, did I think it was my job to talk about, child predators on the internet? Maybe not in that depth, but yes, am I going to teach my kids when they research that, research for a paper, for example, that they could be being watched? Yes, I am going to tell them that because that is the reality. I think age appropriate, but truth in what's going on in the real world is very vital. As a journalist, yes, I do think telling the whole story and telling the bad, if you want to, call it that, but I prefer to say the reality of what's going on. Yes, I think that's serving the people. And like I said at the beginning, journalism is about serving people. And if telling that story would help somebody to stay safe, then yes, tell that story.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well said.
Yeah, that's very well. Because I think the reason I brought that up was we were talking about, growing up in the bubble and all the other nice stuff. And I'm thinking just even culturally, when I was doing work out in London, you had posters on there, very different from the US, because the US, stranger danger, don't get into strangers' cars. Over there, they were literally showing a poster of a woman kidnapped behind the trunk of a car, hands tied, legs tied, beaten, makeup all over, with tape on her mouth so she wouldn't scream. And it's very vivid. You can see it's very, very vivid, and it's London. The US, nothing. And, it sets an underlying tone as to what people outside of the US sees versus what people here see.
Yeah.
And, it's very scary because they're saying, look, guys, this is what's going to happen to you if you do this. Here, it's just like, don't get
in that same vein, ironically, when you talk to people overseas, they do have that, well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them have that perception that Americans are just oblivious to what goes on in the rest of the world. When, to go back to the trafficking piece, do you know how much trafficking goes on or how much of it is brought to the US? And you're right. I think that it's not out in the open and it's not warned about or taught about. And maybe it's through ads like the one you just mentioned, Min, but the rest of the world does look at us often and say, you guys have no clue. Like your head is up in the clouds.
Well, better yet,
And
your ass.
and I was trying to clean it up for the show.
Yeah, no. Look, we know who's gonna be watching the show. No teasing.
But to your point, the overall attitude is really reflective of that. So,
And I'd be curious to hear from your standpoint. Who do you think? I'm not saying whose fault is it, but how do you feel that should be changed to help people realize that, you know, guys, kind of like talking about using critical thinking, critical analysis. Like, how do you recommend people, whether it's the media, whether it's social media, whether it's yourself as an individual or teacher, how do you recommend people move forward with that to change that mindset?
Well, I think it starts with yourself, to be honest. I think you should be a trustworthy, upstanding citizen, not to sound so cliche or so like haughty-taughty, but you've got to build that trust with people and to be able, you know, I can tell you're beautiful all day long, but if I just say that over and over and over, it's going to get to the point where you're just like, whatever, you know, you're not telling me the truth. And people call bullshit. You want to talk about, when you talk about the truth and you're talking about the truth, you know, you tell the truth all the time, you build that trust with people. And so I think that starts there. And then once you have that trust, you know, you're able to tell the stories in the right way and to get those words out there and to be able to slowly change things.
That's actually, you know, it's true, but I think people just have to recognize that at the end of the day. I think people have to recognize that, right? So I'm looking at the time, the climb is almost there at the end. So I'm going to ask one last question, unless Lisa, you have a question, is what is one of the most, I'm not going to say craziest mistake, or what is one of the most funniest or funnest, if that's even a word, experiences you ever had as, you know, writing insecurity and, you know, interviewing this, you know, amount of different personalities and people. You know, obviously, thank you for that. But definitely, what is one of your most memorable experiences, whether it's embarrassing? We like to hear embarrassing stories too, so I like to, but that's another thing.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my. You put me on the spot.
I'm going to say this. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
We don't say that. We don't say we're sorry.
But I'm not sorry.
Oh my God. Sorry, not sorry. Gosh, the one, geez.
well, what about what was one of the most unusual topics?
Oh. That would be
I'll go here with you. So I have been fortunate enough to build trust with people in the industry, and people trust me. When I say off the record, I mean off the record. And so when people tell me things and they don't want me to report on it, they don't want me to say anything, I don't say anything. So I've heard some whimdingers out there like that I'll go to my grave with, to be honest. You know, I think I'm going to go back to my very first experience in security. I'll just say being thrown into ISC West and just learning how big the security industry is, how many players there are, but then how small the industry is. It's crazy.
It's a good point.
The industry has a very big influence, whether you're dry, whether you're funny, whether you're serious all the time. You know, we influence a lot of people as an industry as a whole. And whether you're presenting the information flat, you're presenting the information funny, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as the truth is getting out there. And so I think at events like that, when I was thrown in, I was in shock. Like, for example, and I'm not trying to promote any companies, but Bosch had their truck there. It looked like a Tonka toy truck. It was so big in that freaking hotel. It was crazy. It was crazy how big. I was in shock about security for a long time. And so once the shock went away and just started listening to people's stories and, you know, getting to know them and why they do their job. And I would say overall people are in security because they care about people and they want people to be safe. Yes. Do we have to eat and make money? Yeah, we do. Just like everybody else does in the world. But at the end of the day, we're all in it to help people and protect people.
Agreed.
I don't know if that answered your question, but I think I went off on a tangent and I think the coffee's kicking in. So
yeah, but see, I'm still trying to get a very embarrassing moment that you haven't said. Okay, I'll get it out of you one day.
She's looking for that button. I'm telling you. But and I know we're ending, so this will be my final comment too.
No, it's fine.
you made a really good point. The industry is really big, but it's also really small at the same time. So you see a lot of, that old saying, be careful about the toes you step on today and the ass you kiss tomorrow. So you see a lot of incestuous types of flows from one company from one company to the next, and it's hard for the industry to evolve when you're just recycling a lot of the same patterns between different manufacturers and stuff like that. And I come up against that now, right? So, but it's very interesting. That's a really interesting point. The industry is so big, but it's so small at the same time. So you gotta, for all the things that we've talked about today, gotta be really careful and delicate. And I'm certainly not claiming to be perfect in that area or always saying the right thing, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. You gotta be careful who you say what to.
Exactly. And off the record means off the record. So.
Right.
It's real.
No kidding.
We'll talk over wine. We got this. I'll tell you some stuff.
I know.
And we won't record it.
We won't record it. No, there's certain things you can put on post and certain things you don't. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, I will definitely, yes.